So I just want to do a quick introduction. You're all familiar, I'm sure, already with writer-director Richard Linklater. Let's give him a round of applause.
They are.
It was funny, we were talking outside. One of the narrators in the film, Sonny Davis, is somebody I knew from L.A. and used to hang out with quite a bit, and he's been in a bunch of stuff through the years.
Yeah.
You're saying you'd wanted to work with him?
Yeah.
He's the guy that says more teeth than tattoos. And
Yeah, he does that map of Texas to begin
more
with
tattoos
at
than
the
teeth.
barbecue. Yeah, he's just an actor. He sings in an Austin band called Uranium Savages, kind of a performance art band. He's just a local legend, I guess. I saw him in films, in some of Eagles' films from the late 70s, early 80s. When I was first getting into film, Sonny was the star of a number of those films. So.
A lot of independent stuff.
Yeah.
Shot
and
in
he's in
Texas.
Fast Times at Ridgemont High. And
Right, he's the guy that
He's in a
didn't
lot
want
of
the
stuff.
breakfast or.
He's just had this big career. I think he wrote a book on his acting, just life as a supporting actor or character actor. I think it's called like First Guy Killed or whatever. Like when you're in an exploitation film, it's like, yeah, you work the first 3 days, then we kill you and you're out of here.
So working, talking about looking at these films that were made in Texas and came out of there. I mean, we have a lot of people here who are wondering, like, okay, we're in Chicago. It's a big cultural hub, but there's this big draw. Should I go to Hollywood? Should I go to New York? And you've made the choice to stay in Texas and make that your creative ground.
Yeah, I think I was the first generation of filmmaker who could ask that question at all. Like the guys older than me, you had to. There was the only way. You had to go to Hollywood, work for Roger Corman, and get your foot in the industry if you wanted to make films that other people potentially paid for. So you had to kind of do that. But I think by the time I was making films, coming out in the early 90s and stuff, that I don't think they really cared. Hollywood had the indie world had become more of a real thing, I guess. There was distributors everywhere, there was films from everywhere, it was just a different world. So I think for a writer-director, you don't have to go there. It's probably already a little advantage maybe.
Right.
You get to know people. I'm still kind of an outsider. I don't really know that many people. So you pay the price a little bit, but I think if you're an actor or a writer, you really have to kind of be near the industry, at least getting established. But I don't know, I think there's a real value. When I was younger, before I kind of got those first couple films made, I was like, do I have to go? Is that the only way to do it? And I remember talking to a producer I ran into at a film festival. I was just there watching a million films, and I just pulled her aside and asked her, I said, hey, do you have to go to LA? Here's what I want to do. And she kind of thought about it and goes, try really hard where you are. If that's where your stories are and where you're creative, dig in your heels and try to make it happen there. Whatever you're thinking, because you're torn, I can tell.
Right.
Really go for that. And then if it doesn't work, go there. And give yourself extra time. Like we all have these deadlines for ourselves. Like, by the time I'm 25, I want to, whatever it is. Add more time.
Well, I was
Be
thinking
your own best friend. Give yourself a break. Everything takes longer in this world.
Well, as you watch a film like this, I mean, it's hard to imagine that being shot in Los Angeles. I mean, it's so steeped in the culture and the people. I mean, so the actors, a lot of them are from the area, right?
Yeah, specifically, most of those town gossips are from the Carthage. There's a region of the state over there, northeast Texas, so. We put out a big casting call. I like doing that, though. I like working with, non-actors quite often. And I knew that was the design of the movie. It had to be, these real people, or real seeming people. I know a lot of actors who maybe from that region or are nearby, I felt would fit, but I didn't want you to be able to tell the difference between an actor and a non-actor. I mean, a lot of, a few of them are actors, a lot of local people. Some of them are actually, I would call the real people. That's really Miss Nugent's hairdresser. That's the lady at the end talking about forgiveness, that wonderful thing. She's really Marjorie Nugent's neighbor who traveled with Bernie and Miss Nugent. So
did it help
gets
that you
pretty real at some point in there.
You had a long time. It was like 10 years from the time you first were attracted to the story.
It's been
even longer, maybe.
More now, 14.
Yeah. Okay.
I read an article in Texas Monthly. We have a local magazine in Texas called Texas Monthly. January '98. I read the article. I came on board. I called up the writer and just started talking about it because I'm from that part of Texas. And I was like, God, this story really got that relationship between them. But at that point, we didn't know what was going to happen. The article ends kind of humorously. You think this confessed murderer is probably not going to be prosecuted, or he's going to be probation. That's kind of where the article ends. So that's where I came on board. Kind of started following the case. Went to the trial. Not all of it, but a few days. I saw Bernie testify, and a lot of that stuff in the trial is verbatim things I witnessed. You couldn't make a lot of that up. So I didn't know how it was going to end, and to me, it ended up being a really fascinating legal story too. Not only the complexity of Bernie and Miss Nugent's relationship, to me, what got me so interested, and not to mention the backdrop, the town, those people. They remind me of my mom and her friends and everybody. My own upbringing and everything. So it was very personal to me in that way. But then, to me, the last part, and I didn't want to make it a John Grisham film with all the legal stuff,
right.
But I found it a really fascinating legal case on top of everything else. Like, I think Bernie went from being maybe not punished at all, or very lightly, I would say, to being punished way too much.
Based on class stuff, a lot of it, sort of like he's indicted because he's living this high-class life.
Yeah. Usually when you get indicted, you get punished for class, it's low class.
Right.
Only in that part of the state.
He's a stiff neck.
Well,
right?
let's face it, he gets really punished for his otherness, i.e., gayness.
Right.
And that's the sad truth of it.
Well,
Danny Buck, without using that word, homosexual or gay, wine, fish, first class, he just kind of painted him, and there was even again, I couldn't make it all about the trial, but Bernie had a stepmother who never really, Bernie's mother died when he was 2, and he told me, I never really had a mommy, which is kind of interesting. And his dad died when he was 14. And he had this stepmother who never liked him. They would never really, after a certain point, she wasn't in life. But Danny Buck gets her to get up on, she was the last person to testify and got up there, who hadn't seen Bernie in years, really, not part of his life, and testified that he had worn girls' clothing as a little kid. What the hell's that?
How is that relevant?
Yeah.
Except to get the jury. So you were there in the trials. I mean, this is how you.
I felt like an investigative journalist here.
Have you ever?
My sympathies, and you do research, you really dig in. In the film, if as crazy as some of it might seem, it's pretty close to the facts. I can't think of a lot that, believe it or not, is exaggerated.
So actually, by being physically in the space,
it's actually downplayed. There was a New York Times article, to finish that thought, that, written by Miss Nugent's nephew, and it was about 3 weeks ago in the New York Times Magazine. I don't know if any of you read it. It was a hilarious article, and I was kind of nervous about it because we let this guy visit the set and gave him access. He saw the movie, and I was thinking, God, Marjorie Nugent's nephew, what if he, rips on us for? Yeah. And the article was hilarious because it was like how awful she was, she locked him in a room for 2 days as a kid and chased him with garden shears when, she was just, the closer you get to her, the worse she is. And I read it and thought it was funny. I said, oh no, people are going to think the movie went too light on her, like she's so much worse than portrayed. And I was like, well, that's okay, because the movie's sort of how Bernie sees her, which is better than everybody else sees her.
And also how the whole town sees the two of them, which I think that it becomes like this sort of Greek chorus, but sometimes they're all sort of seem to be in agreement, and then they start having different opinions, and it's interesting that narratively. And a lot of your films, it seems like you spend a lot of time, in addition to sort of the interesting content, you create an interesting form, a different way of sort of experiencing a film. So like, for instance, you've got multiple narrators, which is something kind of unusual, and you have to kind of teaches us sort of how to watch a film in a different way.
A lot of narrators. That was the whole concept behind it. And that idea came from looking at Skip Hollandsworth, my co-writer, who wrote the Texas Monthly article. He gave me his file of notes this thick, and I was just reading through it. And by the time he came on the story, Bernie's in jail, Miss Nugent is no longer, so kind of you're sort of entering the story after the fact. And what was hilarious is just what everybody was saying. I was reading all this stuff going, that's hilarious, So they're pretty enigmatic to me, and I think they always will be. You can't totally understand them. But what everybody was saying, and I said, wow, small town. They're not only talk about the two principals, they talk about each other a little bit too. Oh, Danny Book is running for, So I thought, oh, that's so small town gossip. And then I thought, well, if I've ever seen a movie told, there's Greek choruses, there's narrators, there's little interviews, but to that extent, I thought, because that's the thing a director does. It's like we all have stories, but it's like how to tell the story. What's the right way to tell the story to communicate what you're really feeling with an audience? That's the creative challenge, And I said, well, this kind of gossips, all these different viewpoints of them and each other and the town. I thought, oh, that's the way to do it. So that idea was in the first draft.
Okay, I want to ask one more question, and I'll turn it over, because I know everyone's dying to ask questions. But related to that, it does seem like I was saying, a lot of your films, you approach it in terms of how can I tell this in a different way? And in some things, one of the things in film schools like this, and I teach screenwriting, you'll tell people, show it, don't say it. Well, you've done films where you kind of went against that and said, no, I'm going to say it more than show
That's
it.
probably most of my films.
Yeah, and some of your films in ways are in dialogue with each other, like, Before Sunrise and, or Before Sunset, I'm screwing up the titles.
Rise and Set, yeah.
Yeah, Sunrise and Sunset. But there's almost like films in dialogue with each other, and in this you have this conversation that's happening communally. When you're trying to reinvent an approach, is there a way you go at it, or do you kind of go like, they say you can't do that, so maybe I'll see if I can?
I think I've always had a little bit of that in me. That was always the first time I was interested in cinema. I was like, had crazy ideas about how to tell stories, and I always remember like that part of me that, why can't you tell a story this way, or can you do it that way, or that's just my nature, I guess. But it really depends on the movie. I do a lot of movies that I'm like, well, this one's pretty, you're somewhat in a 3-act structure, and you want to tell it straight. You just want to tell it, in a certain way. Like some movies, stories, they demand a certain, because that's, again, you're making a choice. That's how I want the audience to perceive this. I don't want to be,
like School of
crazy.
Rock might be something that's more like a
School of
development
Rock. Even
of a
my
character.
last film, me and Orson Welles, there's no flashback. It's very, linear. It's just this period film, and there's a lot of else going on. I don't want to muck it up also by putting it out of order or anything crazy. I like kind of simple storytelling, I think, at the end of the day, and where you're not really, I don't know. I think every film has its own rules, visually, storytelling rules, and people will go with you. That's the power of this medium. They will go with you. I think you just have to live by whatever rules you set up. I've done that with a film with absolutely no story, none. And yet, it can work as a film because you're at least providing structure or something. You can't, where does your radical storytelling begin or end, or what is storytelling? And I don't know. I think you do have to have an audience in mind, but that doesn't mean you have to pander to them. You can really challenge them, but I think they can go. The cinema is waiting for so much more than just a 3-act structure and a typical story. But I've done a lot of films, and I realize I like film so much that I want to tell a lot of stories. Some of them are fairly straightforward and traditional, but to me, they're not. There's still something there I very much love about them, and its craziness is somewhere else in that. Maybe it's the performance, maybe what it's really about.
And it might be distracting if you tried to do
Yeah,
something
you
that
don't
was
have
against.
to muck it up. It just depends on the story. Again, it's just that's your taste, that's your art. How do you want to tell the story?
All right,
So-
let's open it up to some questions out here.
Who had their hand up first? Well, the Texan first. Come on.
When you look back at all your films, everything you've made, which one are you proudest of? Which film are you proudest of?
This one.
This one.
No, it took the longest. Well, maybe not. I don't know. I don't have an answer really. All of them, equally or none. I don't know. No one. Both you. You can arm wrestle or thumb wrestle.
I was really glad to hear that you actually utilized some of the actual townies themselves for some of those interviews and things like that. What I'm really curious about is the writing process for this film with the writer from the Texan article. I guess how open was the family to this idea, or did you consult them, or how did that process?
The Nugent family?
Yeah.
Oh, no, we didn't.
I was just curious how that.
Who would we talk to there? I mean, there's no one left. I mean, No, a thing like this that's a true story based on public record, you don't need to get a lot of permissions. That doesn't mean we weren't threatened with a lawsuit at some point, but I knew I was going to be respectful toward them. I changed the name of the father and the son, the deceased father, the son, and the granddaughter who testified. I saw her. I mean, they're not bad people. I'm afraid the story makes them look bad, that their mother and grandmother could be dead 9 months and them not, that looks bad on paper, but I don't blame them because she had pushed them so far away from her that birthday, Mother's Day, Christmas, Valentine's, all those things could come and go and you not, that your messages weren't returned, so I don't know, I was trying to be respectful, but yet truthful, it really happened, so. You can't really defame a dead person legally, so you don't have to get all those rights. I was more concerned with Bernie, really. I mean, I started writing him letters once it looked like the movie was going to happen, just to kind of, because I knew that would be weird for him. So, but, ended up going to, we traded letters. He writes beautiful multi-page letters with great penmanship. Only guys who write letters are guys in prison now, people in prison. But, really nice guy, and Jack and I went and visited him, as you can tell from that last. I shot that with my little flip camera, snuck in.
How much access did you guys have to actually speaking with?
I visited Bernie a couple times now, and the first time with Jack was incredible because of Jack's celebrity. We were given a lot of access. The warden, we sat in a room for an hour or so, and then it was like, hey, could we, the warden came around. I think he got his picture taken with Jack or something. And we're like, hey, can we go see the craft shop? And he's like, yeah, okay, follow me. And, we're walking down the halls, and the prisoners, are going like, Nacho, or School of Rock. It was like the white guys, Latino. We were kind of two different. I don't know. And, we got to meet all Bernie's friends in the craft shop. I really felt better about Bernie because, you think of someone like Bernie in prison, you kind of, it makes you sad. Prison sucks so bad for anyone in prison. But I thought, God, what's his life like? And just meeting his friends and seeing his life he's made for himself there, I felt better about him personally, as bad as that situation is, So I felt a little better about that. And I don't know, the next time I visited him, I didn't have Jack with me. So it was like, okay, you get your room. You can meet here and talk, but you're not getting in. It was a different prison, too. Bernie had been moved. So, you had your hand.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I really enjoyed the town gossip characters,
Mhm.
and
Thanks.
that was really authentic to me. I've been around some of those type of folk in my
Yeah, it's
time.
like small town life
Yeah,
anywhere, really.
yeah,
It's not
yeah.
just, it happens to be Texas, but I always said that's small town America and the world, really. It's just people.
And I'm just curious, how much of that did you let them kind of riff on their own, and how much was just strictly scripted? And
Well, it started off strictly scripted. I mean, it was all scripted. And yet, I really encouraged them to put it in their own words or throw in stuff. So kind of my favorite lines are usually something that was unexpected. The very first interview I did was with the lady who visits Bernie at the inn, who has the glasses with the things. She's really cool, K. Baby Epperson. And that was the first interview I did after casting her. And, we met hundreds of people, narrowed it down, had further auditions, and then here were the people. But this was a weird element in the movie. It's the strange element that almost kept the movie from being made all these years. People would read it and go, what the hell's all this? Because they all kind of sound the same on the page. So it really kind of pigeonholed us as a kind of a weird, arty, non-fundable movie. The industry wouldn't touch this. Even when I had Jack, Shirley, Matthew, no one in the industry wanted to make this movie. I was lucky I had a producer who was pretty tenacious, and she raised money from a couple companies, just pieced it together. That's why you have so damn many producers. So it was like, put the money together, got it, but it was that element, which is some people's, what they like about the movie most now on the page, and of course they don't take a leap of faith with you. So that was the hard part. But when I interviewed K-Baby the first time, and she threw in, she was talking about Marjorie, saying how she wasn't friendly and stuff, and she threw in that line, honey, there's people in this town who would have shot her for $5. You know, $5. I was like, oh God, this is gonna work. Yeah, that's exactly what I had in mind. Them saying something I can't write, I can't think of that. You know, I sit with my mom and her friends and the way they talk and how funny they are. But no one, you know, the funniest people in this world aren't professional comedians. They're real people. They just haven't kind of commodified and professionalized their unique humor. Usually because it's not in their culture. If you don't grow up near an industry, I didn't grow up thinking you could make movies. So, you know, no one ever tells you, oh, you could be a comedian or you can make a living at that. You know, so I've always had this theory that, oh, if you get the right person, give them a forum, they can be brilliant. You know, in that regard. Yeah, sure.
The introduction of Bernie was beautiful. It was really well done with him doing teaching.
Oh, at the very beginning, yeah.
The cadaver. Can you talk a little bit about writing that scene itself and I guess the day of production of it, the days of?
Yeah, I had that idea that it should start, like I just thought it was creepy. I like the idea of a prologue that's not necessarily the story, but it says a lot about his character and the movie ultimately. So I just had that in mind. We had some examples. I think Skip had interviewed some people, and I got to interviewing some, you know, people who do that job. And it was funny. This one woman who ended up our advisor, because I was saying, okay, what kind of tool, what do you need exactly? She was saying things that I just thought, and they take it very serious. It's pretty, I mean, you can imagine the profession. But she was saying things like, yeah, the slight smile, because you don't want them to look unhappy to be there. And she didn't think any of this was funny, and I was sitting there going, that's fucking hilarious. You know, like did she just say that? Or the eyes, and I just thought that was so weird and funny and strange. So I thought, oh, that's the perfect way to start the movie, because you just don't know, is this a comedy? They're dead bodies, but he's funny. You know, whatever. That sets the tone, I feel, for the whole movie. That's what I hope. But you know, just a choice, you know. So.
How often do you think you'll keep in contact with Bernie? Because you can't just make a movie about him and be like, well, see you later. So what's the etiquette?
I still write him. I send him books. You know, and we talk all the time. He's very curious about, you know, the movie and how it's going. He can't. We thought we had a screening set up for him at the prison. I talked to the warden, but just more recently, about 2 months ago, I started trying to set it up for real and got a short email saying, not happening, you know, so I'm still trying to figure out how he can maybe see the movie. He's curious about it, of course. He really liked hanging out with Jack, and he liked Shirley. He corresponded with Shirley. She wrote him some letters. She felt jealous because Jack got to meet Bernie, and so she wrote Bernie letters asking about Miss Nugent, which was great, you know. But she said, you know, Shirley, she said she was talking to Miss Nugent, you know, at night. She had these great communications. Yes, definitely. So,
You said that this film took 10 years since you originally thought of the idea?
Yeah, story 98, script 99,
Okay. Well,
production 10, I guess.
I guess I have 2 questions then.
If you don't have patience, if you don't have delayed gratification, avoid the film industry. Do something else.
I was going to ask, what took so long really with production, with getting that started, and have you had any other films that took a long time from the original?
Yeah, I mean, production was quick once we got there. We shot it in 22 days. But the gestation, I mean, I did 10 other films in the meantime. So it's not like, you know, it just, the planets didn't align back then. I think a lot of it, I didn't know Jack then. I think once I got to know Jack a little bit, having worked with him in 02, 03 on School of Rock, he was young then for it, really, but I thought, oh, he'd be good. But I was busy with other things. So at some point, I just sent him the script, and that was about 3 or 4 years ago. So I thought he could do it. But no one else, I really didn't talk, it's just, again, people didn't like the script very much, to tell you the truth. I always knew it was a great story. I never gave up on it, but I don't think anyone thought it was ever going to get made. It was just once I got those actors involved, then the script became a little better. as they do.
Can I
Read between the line there. It's like, yeah, oh, I read this years ago. Did you rewrite it? No, I hadn't changed a word. Glad you like it now.
I want to interject something just about the performances real quickly. You were saying with Jack, and he, you know, somebody you've been thinking about for a long time, and I know you like to rehearse in advance with your actors
Yeah.
as much as possible. And there was all these great little touches, like Shirley MacLaine's so body defensiveness at the beginning,
Oh,
where
yeah.
people touch her and she just doesn't want to be. And then as they get closer, then she opens up, and all these little subtle things, and the way he walks, and it even gets a laugh his walk towards the end, you know. But it's just sort of he has this whole, he embodies the character
Yeah.
so much. How much of that comes out, and a lot of physical stuff out of these rehearsals?
Yeah, I think a lot of Jack's mannerisms really came from meeting Bernie. He just soaked that up like a sponge. You know, he really just absorbed all that.
It's
You know,
almost
the
like
walk, the accent, just his nature. So much he got from that meeting. And you know, but to his credit, he wanted to meet Bernie. I gave him a choice. Do you want to meet him? You're not. You know. He's like, oh yeah, okay, let's get there. Let's go meet him. So some actors might not have wanted to do that.
Right.
So, Miss Nugent, you know, you talk about things like she did apparently have this, she didn't like to be touched, but Shirley, you know, she's such a pro, she took that to the thing. I think even on the day when they're getting the massages, we just sort of worked that, and she kind of reached out and grabbed his hand. You know, I thought, oh, that's beautiful. Like, I don't think we even discussed that. And that she, you know,
Yeah,
from
it
going
really
like,
makes
oh,
the
don't
scene,
touch
yeah.
me, to like, I'm so comfortable with you now, you know, like, that says a lot for her character, but she did that. You know, she thinks that way.
That's great.
Yeah, so, you know, when you're working with one of the greatest film actors ever, you don't really have to, it's not acting school, you know. It's really just talking about the character, trajectories. We just had a thing we called the honeymoon, when they were happy for a while there. And then it was, at what stage does she turn on him? It's more like technical, really. It was like,
But there's
what's
an
her
art-
attitude at any given time? But every actor needs different things, you know. Some of my favorite moments on this whole process was probably sitting in a hotel room for a day or two with Jack and Matthew, just working on the court scene. That's really their only scene together in that way. And I knew it had to work the way, you know, for the movie and them.
So what type of stuff comes out in that hotel room? Is your kind of, I mean, is it just
I
little
just
mannerisms?
rewrite a
and-
lot. I think a lot of my rehearsal is rewriting the script, you know, just kind of, you get funny ideas, you know, you sit around with creative people and funny things happen and you go, that's better, you know, let's do that. Or you have new ideas. To me, it's never really over until you've shot it, you know, like, everyone's different, it's your own personality, but I've always been that way instinctually, you know, like have a script, no matter how good people think the script is, tell the actors, you know, we can do better. You know, I want to involve the actors in their character. That's my number one goal. And to what degree it gets reconceptualized or rewritten isn't as important as them feeling like they own it. You know, like they participated. Like, I remember in my movie Dazed and Confused, that whole cast thought they had written their character, which is great. That was my goal, because I involved them. And I remember one of the actors called me up months later after the movie came out and said, hey, I just reread the script. You know, it's kind of all there, isn't it? I go, yeah, it was the script. Yeah, that's the story. He goes, yeah, but we all thought we were, I said, yeah, you did. You contributed that line and that line. Yeah, it's all there. But he was a future director. You know, he was thinking like, oh, so he was just kind of picking my brain as far as manipulating actors or whatever he thought I had done.
Right.
And
he's
I
trying
was
to
like,
figure out how that
no,
happened.
you know, everyone's an artist, you know. I'm
Well-
not interested in an actor. And it's not fun if you're an actor. It's like, hit that spot, look there, hit the light, say your line. You know, it's like, you know.
Don't you
I'm much
sometimes
more-
build like an actual rehearsal day into the shooting schedule, like on Saturday, have a
Yeah.
rehearsal?
It kind of keeps going for me. You rehearse 2 or 3 weeks before you shoot, hopefully, and then you, usually on a weekend, depending on what's coming up, or, you know, whatever it takes. Some actors want to do that more than others, but I kind of feel like there's a minimum required generally. So.
Okay, we have time for about 2 more questions.
Hi, I understand like that the court system can be, you know, a bit skewed sometimes. So I don't know, like the interesting trials that have happened in America, what really inspired you to tell this man's story? That, you know, just to know that it would be told.
Yeah, well, like I said, initially it wasn't the legal thing, but I did find that interesting. Like, nobody has heard of a trial that got moved because the defendant was too well liked in a community. I've been asking people for 13, 14 years, every DA, every judge, everybody, defense attorney, no one's heard of that. So that's pretty interesting. But I think I would have done it, even if Bernie would have got off and there wouldn't have been a trial, I still would have wanted to make this movie. I just think something mysterious about his character and just that, again, that relationship. But, stories are everywhere. This trial, there's a million trial movies. There's a million, criminal, true crime. There's stories everywhere. What attracts you to any story? And you have to, we all have stories. We have 100 stories a day come at us from various outlets. What draws you to this? So I think that gestation time I had on this is good because it really distills in you what makes you interested in a story. That kind of defines your life, really. Why are you interested? Why are you studying this instead of that? It's like, it must be who you are. Why are you, of all the books ever written, why are you adapting this one? So it's kind of your choice, it's your own direction. And I think it's important the big test there is if you're still motivated. Like, it was great for me to know 8, 9, 10 years later, I'm still wanting to make Bernie because there was some core mystery to their relationship that I was trying to get at. And so that kept me interested. You can't, if you've already have all the answers and you've made the film in your head or written the story or whatever you're doing, then it's not really that interesting, is it? I think you have to have your own quest in what you're doing, what you're trying to discover. So to me, every film is sort of like this mysterious, master's thesis you're getting on whatever subject. And so in this case, it took me until I really met Bernie in person. That's where I felt I cracked what he and Miss Nugent were about. That's when I saw them like, oh, that was like a domestic abuse situation. Like, because it's kind of mysterious, like, why didn't he leave? Why didn't he, all the typical questions you get, complicated by her wealth and him being the beneficiary and all that, but just why would you kill someone? And he was like, oh, she was so sad and lonely. I was her only friend. I couldn't leave her. It would hurt her too bad. So yeah, okay, in some crazy way, she has to leave you if you're going to stay sane or stay alive or whatever it is. That's two people driving each other crazy. It happens all the time, actually.
All right, we have time for one last really quick one, and then we have to wrap.
Uh-oh. Uh-oh. You can-
Throughout all of the years that you have with film, what is the biggest lesson you've learned about the film industry or about yourself that you would share with students?
Single biggest lesson about filmmaking life? I don't know if it's a lesson. I don't know. That's a tough one. That's a tough one. Lesson. What area? I don't know. I feel very blessed. I think it's like a long-term relationship, like a marriage or something. You have to love it so much at its core. It's like joining the priesthood or the nunnery. It sounds corny, but like there's days when it's so tough or it's so hard to get a movie made now. There's often grim possibilities. It's not an easy way, profession or whatever you want to call it. But I think you have to love it so much. You just have to like movies so much. Like, I've never met a director, good, bad, indifferent, regardless of quality. If you think their films suck, when I meet them, we talk, I see how much they love movies. And so if you don't love movies, if you would not rather watch, there's a new print of, Antonioni's Red Desert at the Music Box, or, whatever. If you wouldn't rather go to that than sit with your friends in a coffee shop, then you're not probably a filmmaker. If you don't want to spend the weekend editing instead of anything else, then you're probably not a filmmaker. Just sort of like, you know what I mean? Like, you're not gonna make it because there's too many people out there who love movies and have your talent or more. So the bedrock of my whole life was I love movies. Not my whole life, my adult life. Once I kind of discovered movies, at age 20 or whatever, then that was I was all in. I run a film society. I'd watch 600 films a year. If I wouldn't have made it as a as a writer-director, I would be a distributor, I would own a theater, I would be showing movies, I'd be writing about movies. I kind of do all those things in my own way anyway. You know what I mean? It's like a life you choose. And where you fall in that world is up to luck and a lot of other things. But, you know, how hard you work and all that. But, yeah, it's not like a typical, it's not a job. No one's ever going to hire you, you know, from a help wanted. You know, you're not going to, you just have to make your own way. But it's like your own passion and your own commitment actually is the key. And that's not, I don't think that answers your question totally, because I'm not really, it's nothing I learned. It's just something I kind of look back and realize, you know. So I guess that's, yeah, if you don't, I don't know. Yeah, just gotta like movies a lot.
Well, thank you so much.
If you want to do that, you know, direct and write. But that's a lot of, there's so many other mediums. It's a great time. I mean, I don't want to be, I said a few things like, oh, it's a tough time to get a film. It's a great time to be a filmmaker. You guys, it's the right generation. Technology, there's so many outlets, there's so much going on. Things are changing. It's really exciting. A lot of possibilities, but still there's that storytelling core to making, you know, narratives, if that's what you want to do. That's, some things don't change that much, you know. So. Anyway, well, I want to wish you all good luck and work hard at what you're doing. And
All right, well, thank you
Thanks
so
for
much
having
for
me.
joining us. We appreciate it.